Clint Eastwood storms onto Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show to promote his new film. But sparks fly when Kimmel's playful jabs clash with Eastwood's gritty intensity. A fiery argument erupts, respect is demanded, and the stage is set for an epic showdown. The lights dim, the crowd roars, and Jimmy Kimmel strides out, all smiles, ready to charm another night on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Tonight's guest is none other than Clint Eastwood, the 94-year-old legend whose new film, a gritty drama about redemption and sacrifice, has critics buzzing. Eastwood's been making the rounds, but his appearance here is a coup, a chance for Kimmel to blend Hollywood royalty with his signature mix of humor and heart. The audience is electric, sensing something big. They're not wrong. Kimmel kicks things off with his monologue, tossing out quips about the latest political circus in Washington. Folks, the White House is starting to feel like a reality show, but with worse hair and higher stakes, he says, grinning as the crowd eats it up. He pivots to Eastwood, hyping the guest with a nod to his iconic roles. From Dirty Harry to Gran Torino, this guy's been squinting at bad guys for decades. Tonight, he's here to talk about his new movie, but don't expect him to go easy on me. The audience laughs, but there's a nervous edge. Eastwood's reputation precedes him. No nonsense, sharp-tongued, and fiercely protective of his work. Out walks Clint Eastwood, tall and lean, his eyes narrowing under the studio lights. The crowd erupts, but his expression is stone-cold, like he's sizing up a room full of outlaws. He settles into the guest chair, and Kimmel dives in, all charm. Clint, you're 94, directing, producing, probably wrestling bears on the weekends. How do you do it? Eastwood's lips twitch, not quite a smile. I get up, I work, I don't waste time on nonsense, he says, his voice low and deliberate. The audience chuckles, but Kimmel leans forward, sensing an opening. Nonsense? Come on, Clint, you're on a talk show. Nonsense is my middle name, Kimmel says, winking at the crowd. He pulls out a prop, a comically oversized cowboy hat, and plops it on the desk. We got this for you, straight from the set of Unforgiven. The audience laughs, but Eastwood's face hardens. I'm here to talk about my film, Jimmy, not play dress-up, he says, his tone clipped. The room quiets, and Kimmel's smile falters just for a second. Trying to recover, Kimmel shifts gears. Okay, let's get serious. Your new movie, it's about a man facing his past, right? Heavy stuff, but I gotta ask, any lighter moments on set? Maybe you and the crew pulling pranks? Eastwood leans back, his eyes locked on Kimmel. This film's about truth, about what it means to live with your choices. I don't think my crew is in the mood for pranks, and neither am I. The crowd murmurs, some nodding in respect, others shifting uncomfortably. Kimmel, caught off guard, tries to pivot again. Truth? I love that, Kimmel says, his voice a touch too bright. Speaking of truth, you've been vocal about politics lately. You've said some things about cancel culture, about free speech. Want to unpack that? It's a bold move, dipping into Eastwood's well-known conservative leanings, especially in a room that leans left. Eastwood's jaw tightens. I'll unpack this. People need to stop whining and start listening. Respect isn't handed out like candy. You earn it through work, through standing up for what's right. The audience is split, some clapping, others whispering. Kimmel senses the divide and tries to lighten the mood. Okay, but respect can be fun too, right? Like, I respect you, Clint, but I also respect a good joke. He signals to the crew, and a clip plays on the screen, a spoof of Eastwood's famous, "Do you feel lucky?" line, with Kimmel's face poorly edited in. The crowd laughs, but Eastwood's not having it. He leans forward, his voice cutting through the noise. You think that's respect? Making a mockery of my work? I came here to talk about something real, not to be your punchline. The room goes silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Kimmel, visibly rattled, tries to smooth things over. Clint, I'm just trying to have some fun. Give the audience a laugh. But Eastwood's not budging. The audience deserves better than cheap gags. They're here for something real, same as me. The crowd's divided again, some cheering Eastwood's defiance, others loyal to Kimmel's charm. The host glances at the clock, knowing they're teetering on the edge of disaster. All right, Clint, let's talk your film. Tell us about it, Kimmel says, his voice tight. Eastwood starts to answer, outlining the film's themes of loss and redemption, but Kimmel interrupts with a quip about the runtime. 2 hours? Clint, you trying to outlast my show? It's meant as a joke, but it lands like a spark in a powder keg. Eastwood's eyes flash. You want to talk about my film, or you want to keep wasting my time? The audience gasps, and Kimmel's smile is gone. The stage is set for a clash neither saw coming, and it's about to get uglier. The air in the studio crackles as Clint Eastwood's challenge hangs between him and Jimmy Kimmel. The host, usually quick with a comeback, hesitates, his eyes darting to the audience who are perched on the edge of their seats. Kimmel's charm has always been his shield, but Eastwood's piercing stare cuts right through it. All right, Clint, I hear you, Kimmel says, forcing a chuckle to break the tension. Let's talk about your film. No jokes, just the real stuff. Tell us about this story you're so passionate about. His tone is conciliatory, but there's an edge, a subtle dare for Eastwood to keep the peace. Eastwood leans forward, his voice gravelly but steady. It's about a man who's lost everything: family, faith, himself. He's got one shot to make it right, to face the pain he's caused. It's not about heroes or villains, it's about truth. The audience is rapt, some nodding, drawn, into the weight of his words. For a moment it feels like the interview might find its footing. But Kimmel, still smarting from the earlier jab, can't resist a nudge. Sounds intense, Clint. But, you know, some folks say your films are a bit, well, heavy. Ever think about lightening up for the audience? The question lands like a slap. Eastwood's jaw clenches and the crowd murmurs, sensing the storm brewing. Lightening up? Eastwood repeats, his voice low, dangerous. You think people want fluff when they're wrestling with real pain? You think that's what they need from me or from you? The accusation stings, and Kimmel's face tightens. He's used to steering the conversation, but Eastwood's not playing along. I'm just saying, Clint, balance is key. You give them truth, sure, but a laugh doesn't hurt, Kimmel retorts, his smile more a grimace now. Eastwood shakes his head, his eyes never leaving Kimmel's. Balance? That's your excuse for turning everything into a circus? I've spent 60 years making films that respect the audience's intelligence. You might try it sometime. The crowd erupts, some cheering Eastwood's defiance, others gasping at the direct hit. Kimmel, visibly rattled, tries to pivot. Okay, let's talk respect. You've said respect is earned, not given. So what's that mean for a guy like me trying to entertain folks every night? It's a loaded question, and Eastwood doesn't miss a beat. It means you stop hiding behind jokes and start listening. You've got a platform, Jimmy. Use it for something that matters, not just to fill airtime. The audience is split, some clapping for Eastwood's call to accountability, others loyal to Kimmel's everyman appeal. Kimmel, feeling the pressure, leans in, his voice sharper now. I listen, Clint. I listen to my audience, to what they want. And they don't always want a lecture. Sometimes they want to escape, to laugh. You ever think about that? Eastwood's eyes narrow and the tension is palpable. Escape? That's what you're selling? My film's about facing reality, not running from it. If you can't handle that, maybe you're in the wrong business. The crowd gasps, and Kimmel's composure cracks. Wrong business? I've been doing this for 20 years, Clint. I know my audience and I respect them enough to give them what they need, not just what I think they should hear. His voice rises, and the studio feels like a powder keg ready to blow. The exchange escalates, each man digging in. Kimmel, desperate to regain control, pulls out another prop, a fake Oscar statuette labeled Most Serious Director. "Maybe this'll cheer you up, Clint," he says, forcing a laugh. The audience chuckles nervously, but Eastwood's had enough. He stands, towering over the desk, his voice cutting through the noise. "You want to disrespect my work? That's your choice, but I'm not here to be your clown." The crowd is stunned, some cheering, others shouting Kimmel's name. Kimmel, caught off guard, stammers, "Clint, come on, sit down, let's talk this out." But Eastwood's done. He turns to the audience, his voice steady but fierce. "You folks deserve better than this. You came here for truth, not a sideshow." With that, he strides off the stage, leaving Kimmel frozen, the crowd in chaos. The cameras keep rolling as the host scrambles to recover, his face a mix of shock and anger. "Well, folks, that's Clint Eastwood for you," he says, his laugh hollow. Backstage, the crew buzzes, and social media's already exploding. This isn't over, and Kimmel knows it. The fallout's just beginning, and it's going to be brutal. The studio is a pressure cooker as Jimmy Kimmel stares at the empty guest chair where Clint Eastwood sat moments ago. The audience, still reeling from Eastwood's dramatic exit, is a mix of cheers and boos, their loyalties split between the host's charisma and the legend's raw conviction. Kimmel, his jaw tight, forces a smile, but his eyes betray the sting of being upstaged. "Well, folks, never a dull moment here," he says, his voice strained as he tries to reclaim the room. "Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more." The cameras cut, but the tension lingers, thick and unforgiving. Backstage, the crew is in overdrive. Producers huddle, whispering about damage control, while social media notifications flood their phones. Clips of Eastwood's walkout are already viral, with hashtags like "Shocks Eastwood vs. Kimmel" and "Respect the Legend" trending. Some posts praise Eastwood's stand for authenticity. Others slam him as a grumpy old man who can't take a joke. Kimmel, pacing in his dressing room, scrolls through the chaos on his phone, his face darkening. "He wants to lecture me about respect?" he mutters to his producer. "I've been holding this show together for years. This is my house." The producer, a seasoned pro, urges calm. "Jimmy, the audience is split. You've got to address this when we go back on. Acknowledge it, own it, but don't let him paint you as the bad guy." Kimmel nods, but his mind's racing. He's built a career on being the relatable everyman, the guy who can laugh off anything. But Eastwood's words cut deep, questioning his integrity, his purpose. The host knows the next segment will make or break the night, and he's not about to let a 94-year-old icon steal his spotlight. The show resumes, and Kimmel steps back on stage, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. "All right, welcome back," he says, his tone lighter but his eyes sharp. "So that was something, huh? Clint Eastwood, folks, a legend who doesn't mess around." The audience laughs, but it's uneasy, waiting for his next move. Kimmel leans on the desk, his voice dropping. "Look, I respect Clint, his work, his legacy. But this is a talk show, not a TED Talk. We're here to have fun, to connect, to give you all a break from the heavy stuff. That's what I do, and I'm not apologizing for it." The crowd cheers, rallying behind their host, but Kimmel's not done. "Clint said respect is earned, and I agree. I earn it every night, showing up, listening to you, making you laugh. And yeah, sometimes that means poking fun, but it's never about disrespect." His words are measured, but there's a fire behind them, a direct response to Eastwood's challenge. Some in the audience nod, others whisper, still torn. Social media's blowing up, with fans praising Kimmel's clapback while others call it defensive. Then, a curveball. A producer signals from offstage, and Kimmel's earpiece crackles. Eastwood hasn't left the building. He's in the green room, watching the broadcast, and he's requested to come back on. The crowd senses something's up as Kimmel pauses, his face flickering with surprise, then resolve. "You know what? I'm told Mr. Eastwood's still here," he says, his voice steady but laced with defiance. "So Clint, if you're watching, the chair's open. Let's finish this conversation." The audience erupts, some chanting, "Clint! Clint!" while others clap for Kimmel's boldness. Minutes pass, the tension building as the crowd waits. Then Eastwood appears at the stage's edge, his silhouette unmistakable. The room explodes as he walks back on, his expression unreadable. Kimmel stands, offering a handshake, but Eastwood ignores it, taking the chair. "You wanted to talk." "Jimmy?" Eastwood says, his voice low, commanding. "So talk." The crowd hushes, every eye locked on the two men. Kimmel, sensing the moment's weight, dives in. "All right, Clint. You said I'm running a circus. I say I'm giving people what they need. Where's the line? What's respect to you?" Eastwood leans forward, his gaze unrelenting. Respect is doing the work, telling the truth, and not cheapening it with gags. "You've got a voice, Jimmy. Use it to lift people up, not just to get laughs." Kimmel bristles, his voice rising. "And I do. I talk about real issues, politics, life. But I don't lecture. People want hope, not a sermon." The exchange is electric, each man holding his ground, the audience hanging on every word. The confrontation peaks as Kimmel pushes back. "You think you're the only one who cares about truth? I'm out here every night, Clint, balancing 1,000 voices, trying to keep this country from tearing itself apart. That's my truth." Eastwood's eyes flash, but he doesn't respond, letting the silence speak. The crowd's divided, some cheering Kimmel's passion, others waiting for Eastwood's rebuttal. The clock's ticking, and the show's on, the brink of unraveling. What happens next will define this night, and neither man's backing down. The silence in the studio is deafening, a standoff between Jimmy Kimmel's fiery defense and Clint Eastwood's unyielding gaze. The audience, split down the middle, holds its breath, sensing the weight of this moment. Kimmel, his chest heaving from the passion of his outburst, stares at Eastwood, waiting for a response. The legend's eyes, sharp as ever, seem to weigh the host's words, but his silence is a weapon, forcing Kimmel to fill the void. "Come on, Clint," Kimmel says, his voice tight but steady. "You've got something to say. Let's hear it. What's your truth?" Eastwood leans back, his hands resting on the arms of the chair, deliberate, calm. "My truth," he says, his voice low, cutting through the noise of the crowd, "is that people are starving for something real. Not your balancing act, not your jokes to dodge the hard stuff. They want someone to stand up, to say what needs, saying no matter who's listening." The audience murmurs, some nodding, others bristling. Kimmel's face tightens, his earlier fire now tinged with frustration. "And you think I don't do that? I'm out here every night, Clint, calling out nonsense, lifting people up. You don't get to tell me I'm not real." The crowd roars, some chanting Kimmel's name, others clapping for Eastwood's resolve. The host, sensing the room's energy, pushes harder. "You talk about truth, but you're preaching to a choir. My audience, they're from every corner of this country, every belief. I give them a place to come together, to laugh, to think. That's real." Eastwood's lips twitch, not quite a smile but a flicker of acknowledgement. "Maybe," he says, his tone measured, "but you're still hiding behind that desk, Jimmy. You're playing it safe, giving them just enough to keep them comfortable. Truth isn't comfortable." The jab lands, and Kimmel's eyes narrow. "Safe? You think this is safe? Taking on politicians, corporations, every angry tweet that comes my way? I'm in the trenches, Clint, every damn night." The audience erupts, rallying behind their host, but Eastwood doesn't flinch. "Trenches?" he says, his voice rising for the first time. "You're in a studio with lights and applause. Try telling a story that makes people face their own failures, their own pain, and then talk to me about trenches. The crowd gasps, the divide deepening, some cheering Eastwood's raw honesty, others loyal to Kimmel's fight. The confrontation teeters on the edge, each man locked in, neither willing to yield. Kimmel, his face flushed, leans forward. You know what, Clint? I respect your work, your passion. But this, right here, this is my stage, my fight, and I'm not backing down from you or anyone. The audience roars. But Eastwood stands, his presence commanding. All right, Jimmy, he says, his voice steady, fierce. You've got your stage, but don't forget why people watch. They're looking for something real, even here. With that, he turns to the audience. You folks deserve that much. The crowd explodes, a mix of cheers and boos, as Eastwood strides off stage, leaving Kimmel alone under the lights. The cameras keep rolling as Kimmel exhales, his face a mix of shock and resolve. Well, folks, he says, his voice raw but steady, that's why we do this. For moments like that. The audience claps, some still reeling, others energized by the clash. Backstage, the crew buzzes, social media ablaze with clips of the showdown. Eastwood's Kimmel trends worldwide, sparking debates about truth, respect, and the role of entertainment. Kimmel takes a breath, addressing the crowd. Look, Clint's a legend, and he's got his way. Me? I'm here for you to make you laugh, think, feel. That's my truth, and I'm sticking to it. The audience cheers, rallying behind him, their loyalty reaffirmed. He cracks a small smile, the tension easing. Now, let's get to our next guest, shall we? The show rolls on, Kimmel's resilience shining through, his connection with the audience stronger than ever. As the night ends, Kimmel reflects backstage. Eastwood's words linger, a challenge to keep pushing, to balance humor with heart. The viral clash becomes a defining moment, not just for the show, but for Kimmel himself, cementing his place as a host who can take a punch and come back swinging. For Eastwood, the walkout is a testament to his uncompromising spirit, a reminder that truth, however harsh, still matters. The audience, both in the studio and online, walks away stirred, inspired, reminded that even in the glitz of late-night TV, real moments can break through. The showdown fades, but its impact endures, a triumph of conviction for both men, each true to their stage.